"You're not gonna believe who I had dinner with last night," she said, laughing. Not nervous, not ashamed, just amused. She pulled off her earrings, one by one, and dropped them into the little ceramic dish by the mirror. The same dish I made for her on our 5th anniversary, back when I still thought gestures mattered. I didn't answer. I was kneeling on the floor, trying to glue the leg back on the kitchen chair she broke last week. She said she leaned on it too hard. I think that's what I've been doing, too, leaning on things that can't hold weight anymore. She stepped out of her heels and dropped her bag. Seriously, Lowell. Guess. I don't know what kind of man keeps guessing when his wife's eyes sparkle like that. But I did. An old friend. She snorted. Kind of. I didn't look up. I couldn't. My hands were sticky with glue, and something in my chest already felt heavier than it had this morning. "It was Grant," she said finally, like she was revealing the name of a celebrity she bumped into at Whole Foods. The glue bottle cracked slightly in my grip. Grant. Not just an old friend. Not just someone from the past. Grant, as in, the man who toasted our wedding with a smile and his number in her pocket. "You had dinner with him?" I asked, slowly, like I was testing the taste of poison. She sat down behind me, cross-legged on the floor like we were kids again. She picked at a thread on her blouse. "It wasn't just dinner. We caught up. Talked. Walked around downtown. It was nice." That word again. Nice. People use it when they don't want to say more. I stood up, chair still broken, glue on my fingers. I turned to her. She looked up at me like I was overreacting just for standing. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. She shrugged. "Because we're honest with each other, right?" I stared at her. Then, I laughed once short, dry, painful. "Honest?" She tilted her head. "You're mad." "No," I said. "I'm not mad." And I wasn't. I was something worse. Then I said the line that changed her whole face. "You kissed him with the lips that told me I was your home." She froze. Just like that, the air left the room. Her smirk cracked. The thread in her blouse snapped in her fingers. And then something strange happened. She smiled again, but this time, smaller. Sadder. Quieter. "I didn't think you remembered that," she whispered. And that's when I realized something terrifying. She hadn't expected to be caught. She'd expected to be forgiven. She stood up slowly after I said it, brushing invisible dust from her knees, like she needed a moment to find her footing, not because she felt guilt, but because the mood had shifted and she was no longer holding the script. There was this long, awful pause between us. The kind that doesn't feel silent at all, but loud, with every sound amplified. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock behind me, the hum of the fridge, the slow creak of the floorboard under my heel. The kind of quiet where you suddenly realize you're standing in the same room as a stranger. She crossed her arms, not in defense, but in that self-assured, arm's-length posture women use when they think you're being too sensitive. I waited for some kind of apology, some flicker of remorse, but all she said was, "You're being unfair." Unfair. That word rattled around in my skull like a stone in an empty glass. I said nothing. I didn't trust my voice. I went back to the chair, not because it needed fixing anymore, but because it gave my hands something to do. Because folding over wood and glue was easier than folding over everything breaking inside me. She stepped closer, arms still crossed. "You and we haven't really been us in a while. You know that. I didn't think you'd react like this. I thought if I just told you plainly, we could talk like adults." I kept pressing the chair leg tighter, watching a line of glue bead along the seam. "You didn't tell me. You announced it. Like it was a promotion." She scoffed. "It's not like I slept with him." The silence after that hit harder than anything else she could have said. She realized it too, because she stammered. "I mean, not that night. We just kissed." It was emotional. I didn't plan for anything to happen. I stood up and faced her again. "You kissed him, then came home and kissed me. That's planning." She looked away, jaw tight. I could see her tongue pressing against the inside of her cheek, the way she did when she was irritated in meetings. I remember that from her Zoom calls. She used to flash me that expression when her boss talked too long. Only now I was the one wearing him down. Then she said it. The sentence that didn't sound like her. Or maybe it did, and I just never heard it before. "Maybe if you paid attention to me more often, I wouldn't have had to look somewhere else." She said it quickly, but not accidentally. Not like a slip-up. Like she'd rehearsed it. Like it was sitting just under her tongue, waiting for a moment to surface. I felt something in my chest tear sideways. Not clean. Ragged. I walked past her, not out of the room, just far enough away to breathe. I pressed my hand to the kitchen counter, the marble cool under my palm. For a second, I imagined lifting that ceramic bowl she kept her keys in and smashing it. Not at her, not even at the wall, just to break something else instead of myself. But I didn't. Instead, I asked the question that had been pulsing under my skin since the moment she walked in. Was this really the first time? There was no answer. That silence told me everything. When I turned around, her eyes were glistening, not from regret, but from the panic of losing control of the story. I could have kept asking. I could have demanded names, places, how long. But instead, I reached down, picked up her heels from the floor, and gently placed them beside the coat rack where she always forgot to put them. My hands were shaking. That's when she muttered, almost under her breath, "I didn't think it would matter this much to you." And that line, is when I knew I'd never trust her again. Not because she kissed someone else, not because she lied, but because she truly believed I wouldn't care. And in that moment, part of me didn't. But something else happened right after. The front doorbell rang, and what I saw when I opened it made her betrayal look like the least of my problems. The chime of the doorbell cut through the silence like it didn't belong to this world. She froze mid-breath, eyes darting toward the door like a guilty child hearing footsteps in the hallway. I'd never seen her flinch like that before, not in arguments, not during storms, not even when we got that 3 a.m. call about her mom's car accident. But this unsettled her. I walked to the front door without looking back at her. Each step felt heavier than the last. I didn't even ask who she was expecting. Something told me she already knew. When I opened the door, the porch light flickered, some cruel theatrical timing, and standing there was a man I'd never seen before, but somehow recognized. Not from real life. From a photo. The one she didn't know I'd seen. A screenshot in her recently deleted folder, sent to a contact labeled JH. She'd told me it was an old work friend. But now this friend was standing on my doorstep at 9:46 p.m., wearing a bomber jacket and an expression that said he wasn't here by accident. He didn't even look at me when I opened the door. He looked over my shoulder, into the hallway. His gaze locked on her before I could say a word. "Hey," he said casually, like we were all old college roommates. "Can we talk? Just for a second?" I stepped into the doorway, blocking his view. "Who are you?" He blinked, then offered the kind of smile people give when they're trying to seem harmless. "It's fine. I just need to talk to her. Not trying to cause anything." My pulse was hammering in my ears. Not out of rage. Out of realization. He wasn't surprised to see me. He knew I lived here. He expected this. He was walking into drama with full confidence she'd let him in. Behind me, I heard her say softly, "Jace. Jace. JH." It clicked, and then the floor under everything tilted. I turned around to look at her. She wasn't panicking, not begging me to close the door, not denying anything. She looked cornered and tired, like she'd run out of strategies and was hoping the ground would swallow her whole. I stepped outside and pulled the door nearly shut behind me, leaving her on the other side. "Why are you here?" I asked him. Jace hesitated. "Because she hasn't been answering me. I told her I needed to talk in person. It's important." I studied his face. Not aggressive, not smug, just calm. The kind of calm that only shows up when someone thinks they have the upper hand, even if they're pretending to be polite. "I don't think now is the time," I said. He nodded once, then stuffed his hands in his jacket pockets. "That's fair. Can you just give her this?" He pulled out a plain white envelope and held it out. I didn't move to take it. "What's in it?" "A copy of something she signed," he said quietly. "She'll understand." That's when I took it. Not because I wanted to, but because she needed to know I knew. Then I saw it first. I walked back in, shut the door behind me, and stood there with the envelope dangling in my hand like a live wire. She was still in the hallway, but now she looked smaller. Like whatever strength she thought she had was dissolving. "What is this?" I asked. Her lips parted like she was going to lie, then stopped. She swallowed. "Nothing you need to worry about." I handed it to her. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. Because the tears that started forming in her eyes had nothing to do with curiosity. They had everything to do with what she already knew was inside. And that's when I finally said it, calm as a whisper. "How long have you been paying him?" She didn't deny it. She didn't scream. She didn't even touch the envelope. She just stood there, staring at it like it was radioactive. And maybe it was, because the silence that followed my question told me everything I needed to know. I'd asked her how long she'd been paying him. Her pupils flinched before the rest of her body did. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I watched her brain flicker between defense, retreat, and surrender. But she said nothing. "I'll give you a minute," I said, stepping back and walking toward the kitchen again. I didn't slam the door. I didn't pace or pull my hair out. I just leaned against the sink and watched the streetlights glow through the window. Outside, the world kept moving. Inside, I was a man holding the last match in a house of gasoline. When she finally came into the kitchen, she'd opened the envelope. Her hands were trembling, but her voice wasn't. "Not yet. It's not what you think," she said softly. I almost laughed at that. "Isn't it always?" Her shoulders were tense, defensive. She placed the envelope on the counter between us like it was a dead animal. "He loaned me money a few months ago, back when we had that thing with the credit cards. You were out of town a lot, and I didn't want to stress you out more." "That's generous," I said. "Except I never saw a missing payment." She hesitated. "I was paying him back quietly. In cash. You never told me we were in debt." "We weren't. I didn't want you to feel like I was irresponsible." "And were you?" I asked. She flinched at that, but nodded. "A little." I looked down at the document. Her signature was at the bottom. So was his. It wasn't a loan agreement. It was a non-disclosure contract. "He had this drawn up?" I asked. She nodded, barely. "Why would someone who loaned you money need a non-disclosure clause?" Now she was quiet, and I was so tired of quiet. I pushed the paper toward her. "Did you sleep with him?" Her head jerked up like she hadn't expected me to say it that directly. She didn't answer. I turned and walked to the back of the kitchen, pressing my palms against the wall. Not to steady myself, to press down the part of me that wanted to scream until drywall cracked. When I faced her again, she was crying, but not weeping, not hysterical, just letting silent tears fall like she'd finally accepted the truth was no longer containable. "It was only once," she said. "It was a mistake." I panicked. "He said he could help me, and I didn't think, You signed a contract to keep it quiet," I said. "That doesn't sound like panic. That sounds like planning." "I didn't want it to ruin everything. You were under so much pressure, work, your health, your dad. I couldn't." She trailed off like she thought I might step in to comfort her. "I didn't. I trusted you to keep our home together while I tried to hold everything else up," I said quietly. "And you turned to someone who handed you paperwork before passion." She sobbed once, hand over her mouth. I didn't mean for it to get this far, but it had, and it wasn't done, because my phone buzzed right then on the counter. Unknown number. One text. "You deserve to know what else she's been hiding. Meet me tomorrow at 10. No cops. No lies." I looked up at her. Her face was pale now. "You didn't tell anyone, right?" she asked, voice tight. I held up the phone, and she sank to the floor like her legs gave out beneath her. Whatever I thought I knew, whatever betrayal I thought I'd already uncovered, was just the beginning. And she knew it. I barely slept. When I did drift off sometime after 3 a.m., it was the kind of sleep that leaves you more exhausted when you wake up, like your mind kept running laps while your body pretended to rest. She didn't come to bed. I don't know if she slept at all. I didn't ask. At 9:48 a.m., I pulled into a cracked parking lot behind an abandoned strip mall 3 blocks from our old movie theater. The address from the text led me there. No sign. No explanation. Just a ping on a map. It felt like a trap, but curiosity, or maybe something darker, pulled me forward. The air was cold, not in temperature but in feeling. Still, heavy, like the weather knew something was about to shift. I sat in my car, engine off, fingers tapping the wheel. At 10:03, a dark sedan pulled up 3 spaces away. One man, late 40s, maybe 50, black jacket, wore it like he didn't care if it was stylish or not. He stepped out and looked straight at me, not in a threatening way, just direct, like he was holding back a truth he didn't want to carry anymore. I got out and walked over. "You're Lowell," he said, not a question. "Yeah." He nodded once. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but it needs to come from someone who's not trying to save themselves." I didn't speak. He didn't wait for permission. I used to work with Jace. Private security, contract surveillance. Nothing fancy. We handled messy stuff for people who didn't want their mess public. Politicians. CEOs. Divorces. Affairs. Still, I said nothing. I felt like I was watching someone peel back drywall in my own house and expose mold I never knew was growing behind it. 3 months ago, he continued, Jace was hired to dig into someone's life. Your wife's. Not by a jealous husband or suspicious friend. By a third party. Someone who believed she was hiding money. Offshore accounts. Side business. Something like that. My throat went dry. What does that have to do with me? He held up his hand. I'm getting there. He started trailing her. Emails, texts, social circles. He found things. But not what he expected. What he found was you. I blinked. Me. You're on insurance documents filed under a false LLC, the man said flatly. Life insurance. And a digital beneficiary form was submitted from your home IP address last month, listing Jace as the emergency contact. I stared at him, stunned. You're saying my wife listed him on my life insurance? He nodded. She's either very careless or very confident you wouldn't notice. My legs felt weak. I leaned on the nearest parking bumper. She's not trying to kill you, he added quickly. That's not what I'm saying. But there's more going on than just an affair. Jace got too involved. Stopped reporting back. Started seeing her on his own. When he went quiet, the client, whoever they were, contacted me to take over. Who was the client? I asked. He hesitated. Can't say. They wired funds anonymously. But they care more about what your wife is hiding than what she's doing. My heart was pounding now, but I forced my voice to stay steady. Why tell me this? Because Jace has been manipulating both of you, he said. And you're walking into a mess neither of you are prepared for. This isn't about a broken marriage anymore. This is something else. Something layered. She's made deals, Lowell. She's been hiding more than just her heart. Then he reached into his coat pocket and handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. Emails. Transfers. One phone call that'll ruin everything you thought you understood about her. I took it, barely able to wrap my fingers around the plastic. One more thing, he said before walking off. She wasn't the only one with secrets. I stood there in the empty lot for another 10 minutes, unable to move. Not because I didn't want to go home, but because I no longer knew what home even meant. When I finally got back, the house was quiet. She was sitting on the stairs, still in her pajamas, eyes swollen from crying, staring at the front door like she somehow knew I wouldn't come back the same. She didn't say a word, and I didn't go upstairs. I went to my office, locked the door, and plugged in the flash drive. What played back in that first recording nearly made me vomit. Because the voice on the other end of her call wasn't Jace's. It was someone I hadn't heard in 6 years. And they were laughing. The playback started with static, then a click, then silence. Then, like someone leaning too close to the mic, came a slow, drawn-out breath. And then the voice. Calm, dry, casual. So, how much does he actually know? The man asked. Mallory answered. Her voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it. Nothing. He's clueless. Still folding my laundry like it's 2016. A sound like a soft chuckle followed. Then, you always had a way of turning that guilt into routine. He'd forgive you for murder if you let him hold your hand while you confessed. She laughed. Actually laughed. The kind of laugh that wasn't nervous or sarcastic, just relaxed. At peace. I know, she said. He's always been the soft landing. That's why I married him. I paused the recording. Just stopped it cold. The room was spinning, but not from the betrayal. It was that voice. That voice wasn't Jace's. It didn't match anything I'd heard in the house, in her calls, or even during her late-night giggles in the bathroom she thought I never heard. No, this voice was from before. From another life. A voice that hadn't existed to us for 6 years. His name was Nathaniel. My brother. He died. At least that's what I was told. Car accident. Rain-slicked road. A totaled truck. Burned beyond recognition. Closed casket funeral. The grief nearly tore my mother apart. And Mallory? She mourned with me. Held me at night. Brought me soup when I couldn't speak for days. I remember her clutching my hand as we stood at the burial site, whispering, You still have me. You'll always have me. But now his voice was on a flash drive dated only 2 months ago. Still alive. Still close to her. Still mocking me. I pressed play again. Do you think he suspects the account? He asked. Mallory hesitated. He doesn't even look at it. He lets me manage the books. If he notices the transfers, I'll just tell him it's for the house. You're sure this will hold up? He asked again. As long as no one starts sniffing around. Yes. They talked like I was a forgotten tenant in a house they already sold. Then she said something that snapped every wire of restraint inside me. Honestly, it was easier before we got married. At least then, I could vanish for a few days and blame it on grad school. And he replied, You could again. All we need is the last withdrawal and a clean exit. I stopped the recording. Yanked the drive out. My fingers were trembling. I stared at the office walls. Our wedding photos. Our framed trip to Maine. The calendar with her dentist appointment scribbled in pink pen. All of it, props on a set I didn't realize was staged. I stood, nearly knocking over the chair, and opened the door. She was still on the stairs. Same position. Eyes glossy. Like she'd been rehearsing an apology she knew I'd never believe. "Mallory," I said. "Who's the man in the recording?" She blinked, froze, then whispered, "Lowell." "Who is he?" She shook her head slowly, lip trembling. "Please don't make me say it. I already know. I want to hear you say it." Her voice broke. "Nathaniel. You said he was dead." She nodded, sobbing now. "He was supposed to be. We faked everything. The accident, the fire, it was part of a plan. I didn't know he'd ever come back. But he did. And I couldn't tell you. You couldn't," I said, stunned. "Or you didn't want to. Because the woman on that recording sounded pretty comfortable lying to my face. She started crawling up one step, desperate, like closing the physical distance might undo the damage. It wasn't about hurting you, it was survival. You don't understand. There were things about him, about what we got into." "You got into?" I cut in. "You and him." Her silence answered that. There had been more than betrayal. There was history, layers, things I wasn't supposed to find. A timeline that started before me and was never meant to overlap with my life, except it had. Quietly, slowly, until I was nothing more than the host of someone else's scheme. She reached out. "Lowell, please." But I stepped back. "I buried him," I said. "I said goodbye at a casket. You let me cry like a fool while the two of you ran spreadsheets." Then I turned, walked into the guest room, and locked the door. Behind me, I could hear her crying. But this time, I didn't feel sorry. I felt watched. Because if Nathaniel was alive, and he was close enough to whisper to her, he might be watching both of us right now. I didn't sleep. Again. Not from rage. Not even from heartbreak. But because I couldn't stop listening to the walls, to the pipes, to the silence that had become a constant presence since the truth surfaced. Every small sound made me wonder, is he here? Is he watching? At 3:11 a.m., I heard the stairs creak. Not loudly. Not like someone sneaking out. No. It was just enough to alert me that she was moving. I didn't go out after her. I waited. I counted seconds. 48 of them. Then the sound of the front door latch. She left. No bag. No coat. But when I walked into the foyer and checked the coat rack, hers was missing. I went upstairs. Not frantically. Just methodically. I opened her closet, her side drawers, her jewelry box. None of it was ransacked or packed. Whatever she was doing, she didn't plan to be gone long. But I noticed her purse was heavier than usual. The flap hadn't been secured properly. Inside, beneath her makeup bag and charger cord, was a small folded receipt. The Palmer Suites, room 408, check-in 3:45 p.m. A few hours earlier. I stood there for a long time with the paper in my hand, not blinking, not breathing. The Palmer Suites was 20 minutes away, just outside the city line. Not the kind of hotel that people use for a getaway. It was functional. Forgettable. Anonymous. I didn't need to think twice. I grabbed my keys and left. The drive was silent. I didn't even turn on music to distract myself. I let my thoughts run wild and feral, clawing at the edges of my patience. I didn't know what I was about to walk into. But something in my gut told me I wouldn't be walking out the same man. At 3:42 a.m., I pulled into the parking lot. Only a handful of cars. Mostly work trucks and rentals. Room 408 would be on the top floor. Corner unit. Discreet. I waited 5 minutes. Just sat there. Engine off. Window cracked. Heart beating so loud I could feel it in my ears. Then I got out. The front desk was empty. One light was on above a coffee pot that looked older than my marriage. I didn't stop. I walked straight to the elevator and pressed 4. Each ding of the floor marker felt like a countdown. The hallway was dim, carpet faded. Room 408 had a brass plate hanging half loose and a door that looked like it had been painted over 6 times. I stood in front of it and waited. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. Because just then, the door opened. Not from inside, but from behind me. Room 409. A man stepped out. Tall. Trim. Hat pulled low. But the way he moved, relaxed, like the hallway was his living room, made my stomach clench. He turned toward me and smiled slightly. Not surprised. Not alarmed. "I figured you'd come," he said. The voice was the same as the recording. Nathaniel. Older than I remembered. Hardened. Not just by time, but by choice. "You're supposed to be dead," I said. "I was. For a while," he said. "Then Mallory got lonely. I didn't move. My fists were tight, not with rage, but to stop myself from shaking. She told me everything, I said. The contracts, the money, the lies. Nathaniel shrugged. Then you know enough to walk away. What I don't know is why. His smile faded. Because she didn't want to be yours anymore. She wanted to be free. And I knew how to give her that. The world doesn't care about soft men, Lowell. You love too quietly. And she needed someone who doesn't. She needed someone who didn't fake his own death and ruin 2 lives in the process? I asked. He stepped forward. She was already ruined. You just didn't see it. I backed up. Where is she? In 408, he said. But I wouldn't go in. She's not who you think she is right now. I stared at him. Meaning what? Meaning the version of her you love is gone. She was slipping when you met her. I just helped her finish falling. I turned toward the door. He didn't stop me. Inside, the lights were off. The curtains drawn. She was sitting on the edge of the bed in silence, staring at a TV that wasn't turned on. Fully dressed. Still wearing the coat she left in. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. She didn't look at me. I didn't speak. For a moment, it was just us. In a dark room, hours from sunrise, surrounded by years of illusion. Then she whispered, I can't fix it. I replied, I didn't come here for that. And the truth was, I didn't know what I came for. But I knew what I was going to do next. Because somewhere, somehow, I still believed in closure. Even if it meant letting go of everything. We sat in silence for almost 10 minutes. Her in the coat she hadn't taken off. Me in the doorway, holding a memory I no longer recognized. The room smelled like hotel soap and something faintly floral, her perfume, the one I bought her last Christmas. I remember how she smiled when she opened the box, said it was perfect, kissed my cheek, and wore it every day after. Now it made the air feel heavier than smoke. I didn't know how to tell you, she said eventually. I didn't answer. Not yet. She rubbed her hands together like they were cold. When Nathaniel came back, it was like something in me lit up. Not love. Not exactly. Just freedom. He knew things about me you never did. Things I never let you know. Because I never asked? I said quietly. She looked up. Because you never needed to. I let that hang. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. She was right in her own way. I gave her peace when maybe she was looking for chaos. I folded the laundry when maybe she wanted someone to throw it on the floor. I was safe. But sometimes, safe becomes invisible. I know this isn't fixable, she whispered. I knew the second you looked at me in the hallway after that envelope. I saw it. The line we crossed wasn't just about betrayal. It was about trust. And I destroyed it. Still, I said nothing. She finally asked the question I think she'd been holding in her chest all night. So what happens now? I looked around the room. The TV's still blank. The bed still made. The silence louder than any argument we ever had. Then I walked over, gently set my wedding ring on the nightstand, and looked her in the eye. You move forward, I said. However that looks. However you need to. I won't follow you, and I won't fight you. She blinked, stunned. You're just letting go? I'm choosing to stop bleeding for someone who no longer sees the wound, I replied. That's not weakness. That's self-respect. For the first time since this began, she cried in a way that wasn't performative or calculated. It was quiet. Like she finally understood what she'd lost. I turned to leave. Hand on the door. Then I paused. I hope you find something real one day, Mallory. I really do. And I meant it. Because the truth is, sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't rage or public shame or even karma. It's peace. And that's exactly what I took with me. 3 weeks later, I signed the divorce papers without needing a second glance. I moved into a small apartment across town, nothing fancy, but warm. I bought a second-hand espresso machine and started playing music again, something I hadn't done since before we met. I even adopted a mutt from the shelter. Named him Oliver. He snores like a bear and drools on everything I own. I'm still healing. Still unraveling moments. Still catching myself remembering the good parts before reminding myself of the truth. But for the first time in a long time, I feel light. No more secrets. No more shadows. Just me. And somehow, that's more than enough.